Welcome, everyone. Today's topic, how does Oracle BI add business value to an ERP migration, with customer presenter Kinetic Concepts, Inc., will be led by Tarlok Sagu from KPI Partners. Tarlok is a regional director for KPI Partners who has a deep business intelligence background with tool sets that include Oracle BI, Cognos, and Business Objects. Tarlok has a business administration degree from Brighton University in England, and much of Tarlok's business intelligence expertise has been gained while working at such organizations as Gilead Sciences and Cisco. Our featured customer today is Kinetic Concepts, Inc., or KCI. Headquartered in San Antonio, Texas, KCI is a leading global medical technology company devoted to the discovery, development, manufacture, and marketing of innovative high-technology therapies and products for the wound care, tissue regeneration, and therapeutic support systems markets. If you want to find out more about KPI Partners or how we can assist your organization with Oracle Business Intelligence, please contact us through our website at kpipartners.com. I will now pass it to Tarlok, who is just outside of San Jose, California. Tarlok?
And welcome, everybody. So I will be talking predominantly about where a customer can add business value to an ERP migration, and talk about a variation of different aspects of where to look for value. So the agenda really will be based upon these topics. So I'll do a quick intro in terms of customers that KPI has worked with on different OBIEE and BI apps implementations. We'll talk about typical ERP scenarios that would influence a move to BI apps. We'll talk about, obviously, what the BI applications are, the Oracle BI applications in some sort of technical and business context. We'll talk about where we can leverage BI apps during an ERP upgrade. And then at that point, we'll transition over to our customer speaker, Miles Gilsenan, who's the Director of Global BI IT at KCI, and he'll talk about his specific example where they had this situation happen. And then we'll talk into where KPI can help customers evaluate whether there's a good fit for actually doing this type of a migration to Oracle BI apps during an ERP upgrade. And then we'll wrap up with Q&A. So this is really the only marketing slide that I'll put in here. It's really to give you some context of KPI. We are a pretty large organization. We've got like about 150 consultants, and we have close to 300 plus projects under our belt of experience around the area of OBIE, BI apps, and different aspects of Oracle Business Intelligence. So let's go into the actual presentation and what I think you guys obviously want to hear. So I'm going to talk about really two scenarios, two typical ERP scenarios that customers are dealing with when they're in an ERP upgrade. And really, the first one talks to when you're fundamentally just upgrading your ERP. And in that scenario, I'll give you the example where you're doing an installation-based upgrade, is what I called it. But it's basically where you've got a pre-existing ERP system, and throughout the deck I'm going to use the example of EBS, but obviously this could be relevant for PeopleSoft or JDE or other ERPs that are out there. But let's just say you've got an EBS version 11, you're going to go to a version 12. This ERP upgrade would typically be where you would just upgrade the version within the actual version 11 to version 12, and it's basically just done there and then. Typically it's a higher risk approach, but it's a scenario which does happen typically with smaller companies that have less dependence on that system, but it does happen, right? The second scenario is really where I think a lot of customers tend to focus when they do an ERP upgrade, is really where they have their version 11 of this EBS system, and now they're wanting to upgrade to a version 12. What they tend to do is they will go out and they'll build another version, obviously that version 12 environment, keep the version 11 environment running in the meantime, and they'll slowly start to port in all of the customized components from the version 11 to 12. They'll port in the data, but it's really bringing in that version 11 content, obviously into the version 12 environment, and then doing a switchover. And that's really most of the customers that we've seen out there actually tend to do that, just because it's a lower risk approach, but it's much more controlled in terms of how you do that implementation. So what typically happens during the ERP upgrade? And so this diagram really depicts, at the top flow is really this example where I said, you have version 11, and then you move to your version 12 of EBS. Again, this could be Oracle. It could be any one of Oracle's platforms, PeopleSoft, JD, or it could even be an SAP. But typically, the situation is you do an audit of what you have today, you evaluate what the fit gap is, and then you obviously go ahead and do the implementation of the table code, business processes, forms, and obviously retraining. On the bottom of this diagram is the business intelligence, the reporting layer. And what this is depicting is where a lot of customers in the past have done this, where they've just taken the existing reporting and gone and moved it from the old version of this ERP system to the new version of the ERP system. And again, what typically you have to do is you have to look at audit, where you say, what do we have today? What are we using today in terms of reports? What are those fit gaps against this new system? And then obviously implementing the table code and the ETL and adjusting metadata, adjusting the reports, and obviously retraining against these new changes that have been made. So there's a level of effort still involved in doing that, and that's typically what happens when you stay with the existing reporting system. And so a lot of the discussion, obviously, in this webinar will be around what is it that we could do to really make enhancements on business value for that reporting transition through the upgrade. So really, the focus then obviously is on an ERP upgrade. Many customers historically have really focused on the ERP and then really focused on what can you do with improving functionality. So moving from version 11 to version 12, you tend to get a lot of new functionality. So that's really the value that you get from that side. And then it helps streamline the business processes and makes the business run a lot more smoother and a lot more efficiently. So that's really the focus on the ERP upgrade. But then in that scenario that I just showed on the previous slide, what really happens with the reporting piece, right? So what happens there is you keep what you have in the new system, but there is a budget allocated for that. So there's typically about 10 to 20% of the ERP budget, which, many ERP upgrade budgets can be quite big. So 10 to 20% is still a significant amount of money that is allocated to try and just move that existing reporting system to the new platform. And generally, what we've seen in many scenarios is there's really no net new reporting capabilities or no net new business value added through that migration. And so obviously what you're doing is you're spending dollars with no incremental benefit to the business. And that's really what we're going to focus on, is how do you then drive that net new business value. So what this slide really talks to is what are those users that benefit from just the ERP upgrade, and how do they perceive the ERP upgrade typically? So I'm going to work at the bottom of the pyramid. You typically have your frontline employees who really are the individuals that are in the system a lot more, the ERP system, driving obviously information in it, helping input data, making sure things are approved. So those individuals typically see a lot of the benefit because their processes are a lot more streamlined, the system is doing a lot more for them and really helping them in their roles. The line management is really the next segment up. They see benefits. They see benefit because their employees, which are really the frontline employees, are working more efficiently. And so they do understand a lot of the benefit with the ERP upgrade. But they also begin to see another paradigm because they tend to be BI users as well, where they've really not seen any net new BI capabilities that have allowed them to be able to monitor how their business processes are working more efficiently as well. And then the top segment, the business executive, so they obviously understand from the feedback they get from the line management, yes, it's helping us, and having the ERP upgraded is definitely adding value. But generally, the business executive is always the big user of the analytics piece because they tend to run the business through more of a analytical standpoint and analytical information perspective. So for them, they tend to see it more of a, there's a lot of money spent, but I really don't understand the business value just because I'm not seeing it. I understand that the frontline employees are getting it, but I don't see anything that I'm getting now from a better information perspective. So let's talk about the types of options you have available to you when you do an ERP upgrade and where you can really take the BI system. And there's really three scenarios you have available to you when you're upgrading your EBS system from 11 to 12, or your PeopleSoft from one version to the next version. And so the first example, which obviously we talked about a little bit, quite a bit in one of the previous slides, was keep the existing reports and reporting system in place and move that to that new ERP platform. So this kind of gives you a balance of what does it mean in terms of your license costs, your implementation costs, your implementation timeline, your risks to the ERP implementation, incremental business benefits, and incremental IT benefit, right? So with the existing system, I think I talked about it. You know, there is going to be no license cost because you're basically going to be taking that existing platform and moving it up. You may do an upgrade of the BI platform version, but generally there's no real incremental license cost. The implementation cost will be low to medium just because it's most of what you already have is there. You're going to be doing a retrofit so it goes on the new version. And your implementation timeline will be low to medium as well. And then the risk to the ERP implementation, just because, you know, internally within IT you tend to have the skills to already support this. You tend to understand what this platform does and how it's used in the business. It's relatively low. But the big issue then is that you've really not added any value, which is really the incremental business benefit. There's really no net new value to the business in new types of analytics or looking at analytics across a company perspective. And then there's no real benefits to IT just because you are still using the same platform, and there's no real longer-term perspective looked at that existing system. So the second option is really talking to, let's move away from our legacy reporting tool to a third-party reporting tool. And in this example, a third-party reporting tool or third-party BI application. And in this example, it's really talking to, you know, I've given a few indications here. It's a business objects or a Cognos type of scenario. Well, license cost obviously is going to be high because you're going to have to buy brand new licenses for that. Implementation cost is going to be very high because you potentially may have to build data marts for that, which is not a trivial cost to you know, undertake. And then the implementation timeline, I think, you know, if you've been in IT and you've done an implementation of a completely custom data mart, you'll understand it's quite a high implementation cost. And the risks behind that, just because there's so many tight interdependencies between building a custom data mart and BI solution against an ERP system, it's quite a high-risk approach to take. On the positive side, you know, there is some business benefit because what you'll do is you'll fundamentally build something that will be a little bit closer in terms of the fit for what the business is looking for today and then for obviously for the next few years in terms of the way it needs to drive analytics to drive its business. And on the IT side, yes, you potentially have a value add there where you can then at least standardize on one platform and look at that as the standard, right? Now, the third option I really want to talk to is what does it mean if you go and build the, actually buy the pre-built Oracle BI applications and implement those against your EBS version 12. So it does have the highest cost, but you put it into context that you get a lot of pre-built components within it. The implementation cost is low to medium, again, because you get a lot of pre-built data. You get pre-built data marts, pre-built ETL, and pre-built reports and metadata, so that a lot of the content is already pre-built. The implementation timeline is very low just because, again, it's rapid deployment because a lot of it's pre-built and can be simultaneously deployed with the ERP implementation. And the risk to the ERP implementation is low if implemented using a proper ERP/BI methodology, making sure that the two are actually working cognizance with one another. The biggest thing I think here is that you're going to get a lot of business benefit. There's a lot of value in now using this solution, just because the business now has an ability to look at the analytics that it never had before, but also analytics that it can now look across different workflows like procure to pay or different aspects of the business, like functional business. And then the incremental IT benefits is that it's low upgrade and cost in the future. And really what we'll talk to there is with an Oracle BI app going against one, let's just say the example of the EBS system, your next upgrade, which would be maybe R12 to R13, you're going to be already putting a lot of that emphasis now back on the vendor that's selling that, because they've already done a lot of the integration for you, like Oracle. So that's really where IT gets a lot of benefit, because now they don't have to worry about the headache of fit gap and all that stuff. That's actually minimized just because a lot of that integration is already done. Okay, so let's talk about, for those of you who are new to BI apps, who are not familiar with them, what are the BI applications? So really what BI apps are, and the Oracle BI app specifically, are prepackaged data warehouses with reports and metadata and ETL that work against the ERP systems that Oracle owns, EBS, PeopleSoft, JDE, and also does work against these legacy, sorry, not legacy, but other third-party ERPs like an SAP. Today, most Oracle ERP customers are doing their reporting via, Discoverer, FSG, homegrown data warehouse of competitive products. And that's really where we're trying to focus and say, hey, there's a better way to do this and a much more valuable sell to the business, because they would get a lot more benefit out of this. But really looking at the last bullet, the big thing about the BI applications, the Oracle BI applications, is they're really, really quick to deploy, just because the pre-built content, pre-built integration into the ERP system is already there, and really then can be extended and supported for additional customization if there are some specific nuances that you have within your business on how you want to do certain analytics. And then obviously what I've talked about, there's quite a heavy cross-functional analysis component where you can look at different analytics across functions or workflows like procure to pay, and obviously there's the ability to do self-service analytics as well. So for the technical individuals, this is really more of a technical view of the BI applications, and just I'll spend just a few minutes on this. It's really, if you look at the top, it's got the source system, and then we've got the dotted lines at the top, and then right at the bottom where the users are. Within the confinement of the dotted lines, that's the BI app. It's basically pre-built ETL, pre-built data warehouse, pre-built metadata layer, which is the layer that actually the end user ends up interacting with, so that it's much more business-facing, and then the pre-built reports and dashboards. And really what I've done is, just to give everyone an understanding, it's not just a data mart, and that's kind of why I highlighted the statement in the middle in this slide deck. The big thing that you'll find with certain vendors, they'll sell you a data mart, but the data mart doesn't really extend that easily to become a data warehouse. The Oracle BI apps does work as a data mart if it needs to, but it also is very, very adapted to extending as a data warehouse, so you can add other functional star schemas within that. So let's talk about leveraging BI apps during an ERP upgrade. So typically what we're suggesting here through the webinar is, so it's kind of the same slide as what I've already presented, but the difference now is that you've got the Oracle EBS upgrade on the top still. On the bottom, you've basically got these legacy systems on R11, and really what you're going to be doing is looking at now putting the Oracle BI apps as the actual platform on R12. And what you'll notice is in the table in the middle, which really talks to the process of the effort that you have to go through, it's exactly the same effort. So there's really the same things you've got to do. You've got to say, what do we do today? What's the usage of what we do today? How does that fit into the new system? And all of that is reusable for a BI app implementation, which is going to help you then do any ETL implementation, metadata implementation report, and then retraining. There's all the same approach and effort that you have to do would fundamentally help you do that move to the BI app, Oracle BI app. So really, how does this improve? How does improved reporting add value? So this is really around the Oracle BI applications. So for business management, you're reporting at the business process level. So you really can now look at things much more widely as a business manager. Order to cash versus the siloed reporting which you would have today in your legacy ERP system. So you'd be able to look at things as they move from one end of the process right the way through to the other, and then make some decisions in terms of where you can optimize certain processes. The ad hoc reporting by the business versus the static reporting built by IT. So that's really something that I think is really big for business and IT. Business now is more empowered to do their own ad hoc reporting, meaning that they can do more self-service, and then therefore takes a lot more of the pressure off IT to do report development and delivery. And then business dashboards for executives. So really focusing on exception reporting and KPIs and key metrics. And that's really important because when I showed the pyramid with the different types of users that benefit from an ERP upgrade, that would really focus on that business executives where they really now have much more greater visibility on how their company is running, or their functional area, or their multiple functional areas are running between each other. And then the win for the CIO is really lowering the TCO, the total cost of ownership, by using a product that will be easier to support and upgrade in the future with the next ERP upgrade. And I'll talk a little bit about that in terms of the Fusion landscape. So the Oracle BI apps implementation value add, right? So this is really much more solution focused slide. So there's the consolidated reporting, enterprise reporting, which helps you eliminate the data silos, which you will predominantly have in your legacy system if you're using something apart from the Oracle BI apps. So you will move away from that, and you'll now be able to have a more centralized data, allowing you to do more of the single version of the truth. The second one is you can leverage data archiving and testing. So that's another piece that's quite an important piece. When you look to implement the BI apps against your EBS R12, as the example again, you could potentially leverage the app to pull any historical data from the version 11, archive it, meaning that you now no longer have to move it into your R12 system. So there is another piece there that's actually quite a big value add, because I know in my experience, and I know in the experience of KPI, we've had, it is quite an effort to move historical data from one system to another. We talked about decreasing the ongoing IT support costs. There's obviously that, because now you are doing, IT is doing less report development. They now have a standard platform. There's a lot of things that go about actually having a more standard platform to be able to do that. And then in the red font, the Fusion Ready, that's actually one of the big value adds. So when you go when you do the next ERP upgrade from R12 to R13, which is the example, you basically, if you're on BI app in R12, your migration cost from going to R13, as an example, is significantly reduced. Your effort is significantly reduced. A lot of the emphasis on that integration or that migration is already done by the vendor, Oracle, and they will obviously have an approach and a much more seamless, smoother approach to moving and upgrading your ERP and your BI, Oracle BI application in the same sequence. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the finer details now on the process when you want to move to a new version of, when you want to move to Oracle BI apps. So really, there's 4 steps that I'm going to put in as a proposed approach. There may be some nuances that some customers may do it slightly different. This is generally the focus area that you want to look at. But really, step number 1 is prior to your actual ERP upgrade, you want to implement out-of-the-box BI app, right? And so that's really for data archiving and historical data loading, right? And when I say that, generally what you may want to do is you might want to plug that against your old version to pull the data out, your old version of EBS, which is version 11, and spend 4 to 8 weeks putting Oracle BI apps against it, use it to pull all the data out that you need to, and then obviously you've got a copy of what you need to archive. And then also what it becomes is it also becomes a baseline, because there's another value add in when you have that Oracle BI app connected to your old version. So it's a baseline for when you do data testing, right? So when you want to test your version 11 data against your version 12, because you may still want to port some of the data from the ERP system to your new version to be able to do some comparisons to make sure that the new system is working correctly. Step number 2, then obviously set up your new version of the ERP system. So this is that where you build your new EBS version 11 system, and then you may want to migrate X number of years of data. Some companies want to do 2 years worth of data. If you've got like 10 years worth of data in your old version, you may then be able to archive the 8 years in the BI app and then just port over 2 years worth of data. Step number 3 then is implement your BI app against the new version of the ERP. So now take your BI app and implement it against this new version. And obviously what you can do is you'll do out-of-the-box implementation and then customize or configure, is probably the right word, to your specific nuances that you have at your company. And so that you can actually make sure that there are analytics available when you go live with the BI app with the ERP system. And then the final thing is you have an option, then you'll need to go live. So you have 2 choices here. You can either go live with both the ERP and the BI app at the same time, which some companies do. But what I've seen is many companies actually go live with the ERP and then generally stage in the BI deployment maybe a few weeks after, just so that the data is flowing through and it's being loaded in the BI app, and then bang, you're up and running with your BI application. So that's kind of the 4 steps of migration that you would want to look at in more of a detail when moving your ERP system with a new BI app implementation. So then why do you want to move during an ERP upgrade? So obviously we talked about there's no need to migrate all historical data. You may want to just take 2 years as an example and then keep the 8 years behind in your BI application. That significantly helps reduce the cost for the ERP migration. You can help with the data validation. So you basically would have a BI app connected to your old version of ERP, and then one connected to the new version. Before you go live, you can use the BI application to do data validation to make sure everything's syncing up in terms of system to system. The other one is that the hours put into the fit gap analysis for the existing BI system, so that's your legacy BI system, can be leveraged when you basically implement the Oracle BI app. And the effort and funds required to upgrade the legacy reporting system can be transitioned. So that's basically the same concept where you would have the fit gap can be leveraged. The funds can also be leveraged as well. And obviously, those funds could potentially be transferred to license costs, would mean that you've got a lot of content already pre-built, but there's fundamentally a better use of those funds also because you're going to be adding value to your implementation through an analytics standpoint. And then obviously we'll help reduce IT support and redundant reporting and data silos. And one of the big things I think everyone needs to focus on is you're going to, again, need to upgrade your ERP system when the next version of your ERP is released. You know, what this is ultimately going to end up doing is making it easier for the customer IT organization and the customer to basically do future upgrades, because a lot of the integration will be pre-done by the vendor, obviously Oracle, and meaning that it will be a significantly smoother effort for future upgrades. Okay, so I am going to transition to a case study, and so we've got a guest speaker from KCI. Miles, I'm going to transition over to you, and I'll let you take from here and let me know when I need to move slides.
Excuse me. Okay, thanks, Tarlock. My name is Miles Gilsnett. I'm with KCI. I'm the Director of Global Business Intelligence for KCI. I'm in IT. I'll take you through the case study today. Tarlok, you can go to the next slide. Okay, excuse me. So just a few minutes on what and who KCI is, and then we'll get to the slides. So KCI has 3 primary businesses, and it was really only a year and a half ago that we implemented an explicit business unit model for the way we are organized internally. So we do VAC therapy for wound therapy, regenerative medicine, which is pretty exciting. It's through a company called LifeCell to kind of actually grow reconstructive tissue. Then we've got therapeutic support systems for quite specialized hospital frames to aid healing. Those are all 3 are global business units, and all 3 are included in our global enterprise-wide reporting strategy. You can go to the next slide, Tarla. Okay, so we are engaged in a broad-based global transformation project that's really touching all major process streams: C2C, procure to pay, customer to cash, procure to pay, and account to report. And additionally, we've got a global reporting strategy that we're putting in place on top of that. So in terms of the transformation project, we're trying to get from about 16 plus ERP systems down to two instances. Our ERP system is Oracle. This is going to occur about over a 4-year time frame. The first phase of this occurred about a year and a half ago, where we upgraded our European instance to Release 12, and we migrated to Oracle Business Intelligence, with the first BI app being the financial apps, and that continues to this day. The overall BI project, we kind of call it our global reporting implementation, will continue really throughout 2011 and into 2012, where we migrate the whole of the organization to Oracle Business Intelligence, and at least 3 BI apps, if not more. And we're seeing a lot of benefits already, but I'll get into that on the next slide of what the use of the BI apps is providing for us. Tarla, can you go to the next slide? Okay, so this is maybe a little bit hard to read, but working right to left, and this is where I'll get into the kind of the BI apps. Starting on the left-hand side is a depiction of the variety of applications that we had out there and ERP instances. Moving to the right, we did go ahead and upgrade our European instance, and we still have Release 11 domestic. We still have a domestic Oracle instance, and then further on down you see Release 11 LifeCell as our 3rd major ERP instance. The next slide over, the next column, the 2 next columns are really aspirational. We're looking to get to a single transaction processing instance, like many firms. So this is where the BI apps have come into play. We had to go through a thought process of how to get to that single transaction processing instance. Should we collapse all of our instances down into that particular instance, just do it in one fell swoop? We did the analysis. It was really quite risky. At the same time, we really needed to get to a global reporting platform where we had a consistent look and feel globally, a consistent set of master data, and a single repository for enforcing standards around some of the key enterprise-wide calculations: revenue calculations, receivable calculations, profitability calculations, which are all done quite kind of ad hoc at the moment, and the old source of the truth gets hard to come by. So, and this is where the BI apps came into play, because it became apparent to us that because we had the BI apps, we could implement global reporting before we actually got on that transaction processing instance. And so that's what we've chosen to do. So we have chosen to upgrade the Release 11 domestic platform. Just go ahead and do an upgrade. And then pretty much right after that upgrade, because concurrently we would have been analyzing, pretty much right after that upgrade, start a migration to the BI apps that we own. And we own finance, service, and order management and supply chain. So right after that upgrade, which will happen later this year, we'll transition from Business Objects over to Oracle Business Intelligence using, of course, the apps in the Business Analytics Warehouse. And that's going to provide us a framework for a single set of master data for all our major master data, certainly the finance stuff, but also customers, items, pricing, contracts, etc., and provide us a platform for key calculations. So we're doing the analysis now. We'll do the analysis throughout this year. We will go ahead and upgrade and then transition over. I should say that there's one specific case where we chose to go ahead and migrate to the OB BI app before the upgrade, and that's in the case of the general ledger. It's general ledger information. We will go ahead and upgrade, and we're doing that in part because we're going to switch to a new chart of accounts. And right when we do that, we want to begin leveraging the BI app, the financials BI app. So we're going to be able to implement global reporting perhaps years before we get to a single transaction processing instance. And it's not just global reporting by bringing everything together in a set of disparate data warehouses. It's global reporting through an architected, frankly, enterprise data warehouse, which is how we're viewing the BI apps. And that's kind of in between the second column and the third column. Can you go to the next slide, Tarlok? Okay, so some of the benefits for the BI app, certainly the common front end to the users before and after the upgrade. We are implementing the common look and feel, in some cases before, frankly mostly after the upgrade, but it will be a common platform with a common look and feel, a single set of master data, and we'll be doing that long before we're on a single transaction processing instance, and doing it, frankly, in conjunction with the upgrade process. So the analysis is going on at the same time. We're not waiting for the upgrade. We're able to integrate our use of Salesforce.com with OBI. We've got close to 1,000 Salesforce.com users that will be using OBI as a reporting front end for sales performance data. And they may not even necessarily be aware of that because it will be from Salesforce.com. And again, that's the common look and feel that's going to happen in the U.S. and is already happening in Europe. We are looking at one RPD, so we're going to have one instance of an RPD and multiple data sources. And again, that's driving the standardization, the enterprise-wide strategy across metadata and the calculations. We're replacing business objects and other tools with OBI, and there's an important strategy that we've undertaken is that, and then I'll just wrap up and see time-wise here. We're very much not doing a report-by-report conversion from business objects to OBI, as we call it, or business intelligence. There was a massive proliferation of reports. They're not necessarily aligned to the business process in the business object space. They're multiple sources of the truth. They don't really reflect the standardization that we would want. So we're talking to people about information requirements and how that information is used in the business process. And then in OBI, we'll create reporting dashboards, filters, prompts, etc., to align to the business process, and not even going to approach the kind of report-by-report migration that could get us in trouble and recreate what we had in the past. Just mention here that the challenges we're facing, we don't yet have single sign-on, and that's kind of tough. And we are changing chart of accounts. That's a whole nother discussion, but we are implementing a global chart of accounts in all 3 instances. We're going to do that here on our U.S. instance in July. And concurrent to that, we will leverage that chart of accounts in the Oracle Business app. There's already about 8 to 10 entities overseas using that chart through the BI apps. The reports are already set up, so we just need to convert the chart, get the data into the warehouse, and we'll leverage the same reports that we've already built, same structures. So it's a challenge, but the BI apps are helping us leverage the chart. If we put it in, it didn't have a way to report globally, there wouldn't be much benefit from the chart. Can you go one more slide, Tarlok? Okay, that's it. Thank you, Tarlok.
Thank you, Miles. That was interesting, good case study. Okay, let me just we're coming to the end of the webinar. I really want to talk about just 2 more slides. I think it's 1 more slide actually. How can KPI help? So what KPI can offer at a help for customers who are considering looking at a BI application, Oracle BI application, whether it's for an ERP upgrade or not, is really this thing we call an assessment study. What we do in that assessment study is really do a business case workshop where we look at what your current solution is, really try to understand some of the business drivers about what you're trying to do from an analytics standpoint, and where we can really do some enhancements of those analytics. And then the next step is really a fit gap assessment. So what the fit gap does is really, it's more of a technical assessment. It looks at what is your source system, what does the BI app that you're looking at potentially to fit your problem, how do those two work together, and what's the percentage fit from an integration standpoint. And with those two types of assessments or workshops, we are able to deliver you a documented return on investment or total cost of ownership business case, so you can fundamentally go and actually take that up for funding or other areas where you need to get buy-in from within the business. We'll obviously give you a documented fit gap of the BI application and how that would work in terms of how that can work against your ERP system. And then ultimately a project proposal in terms of, okay, we know you want these analytics, we know that this is the fit gap, and you know you've got this much customization. This is really the total implementation, which would obviously have a timeline and then obviously a funding model built into it, so you don't understand what that all means. So that's something that we do. It's something, if customers are serious about looking at BI applications, we can obviously help and put that type of information together for them to consider it as an optional BI solution.
Thanks, Tarlock. At this point in our session, we will open up the forum for any questions from the attendees. Our first question is actually from Twitter using the hashtag KPI Partners. This is for the panel. Is it possible to deploy the Oracle BI applications against multiple ERP systems of different flavors, i.e. EBS, PeopleSoft?
But this is Mark Jocelyn. I can take that. Absolutely. We have many customers which are implementing it for multiple versions of ERP systems simultaneously. That's one of the key value propositions to the upgrade process. So if you bring one facility live on R12, you can put in OBIE for that facility as well as the other facilities on various versions. And we have other customers which have many as 18 different source systems coming into one BI platform. So combining SAP, PeopleSoft, EBS, JD Edwards, all into one reporting platform. So that's where, the value proposition, the BI applications start to exponentially grow. The shorter answer is absolutely.
Great, thanks, Mark. Next question. This is from Jags. How many companies have you seen doing the R11 to R12 and BI upgrade simultaneously?
So Mark, do you want to take that one?
Sure. We see quite a few companies doing that. And in fact, we've got a couple customers which are not only doing it simultaneously, but some are actually bringing up the BI applications on 11.5, then do the R12 upgrade so that it provides a seamless interface to the users, minimizes risk during the implementation, and facilitates a smoother transition for the end users. So it insulates them from some of the transaction process changes.
Thanks, Mark. This one should be an easy one for you guys. What is an RPD?
An RPD is the file, basically, what we call the common information model. So unlike other tools, OBIEE uses one common information model globally so that you have one place to define what is cost of goods sold, what is profit, and how you calculate that. Now, instead of having a bunch of different cubes or universes or hard coding that in all over one report, we have one place to define our hierarchies, our metrics, our connections and traces back to the data sources so that it's continuously reused. And, you know, for those of us overly familiar with OBIEE, we call that the RPD, or a technical term.
Great, thanks, Mark. This one's for Miles. How was the data warehouse integration done with the Salesforce.com data?
Okay, hi, this is Miles. Okay, to be frank, the integration right now with Salesforce.com in the U.S. is where we're going to present information sourced from KCI system in Salesforce.com. We're not actually loading Salesforce.com data into the BAW, but it is a project that we have on the agenda for Europe, and we're basically, I know you can buy the sales analytics. What we're going to do is we're going to basically create some custom fact tables and leverage the common information model from a dimension standpoint that's already there, and then we'll present it back within the Salesforce context. So we'll leverage the warehouse and Salesforce as a front end in Europe, and then ultimately in the U.S.
Absolutely. And KCI chose to do a custom OBIEE solution on top of that Salesforce.com data and present it all within one view to the customer. KPI Partners also has other customers which have used our KPI-written Salesforce.com adapter to bring that Salesforce.com information into the BI application for sales. So you do have both capabilities.
Thanks, Miles. Thanks, Mark. Next question is from Victor. Can you convert Hyperion reports to Oracle OBIEE?
You can convert those reports, you know, and when you say Hyperion, we definitely can use OBIEE to report off of S-Base, and to do that, also OBIEE is the strategic direction forward, so there is a conversion utility for even converting old Brio reports.
Thanks, Mark. Next question is from Dave. What different functional areas does Oracle sell BI applications for? What different functional areas?
The functional areas are both for the front office and also back office. You have, you know, supply chain, order management, procurement and spend. You also have on, you know, sales analytics, pricing analytics, loyalty analytics. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few, and there's also the industry specific, such as a public sector financials and also insurance specific BI applications.
Thanks, Mark. We've got another question from Victor in regards to Hyperion. It looks like Victor's interested in what it might look like to upgrade these Hyperion reports to OBIEE. So his question is, what are the main steps to go through when upgrading from Hyperion to OBIEE? We want to tackle that?
Absolutely, and perhaps maybe we table that for a discussion one-on-one with Victor, because I would need to know a little bit more about when he says Hyperion, is he talking about Hyperion reports, web analysis, interactive reporting, what version interactive reporting, you know, S-Base templates. I came from the Hyperion acquisition, and there's many versions of Hyperion reporting. Going forward, they're all being consolidated into OBIEE, and that conversation would be dependent upon some specific details to his environment.
Great. Victor, we'll reach out to you and see if you want to discuss this a little bit further. So at this point, thank you, gentlemen, for the for all those answers to those questions. This concludes the Q&A portion of the event. If you want to find out more about KPI Partners or how we can assist your organization with business intelligence during an ERP upgrade, please follow us on Twitter at KPI Partners or contact us through our website at kpipartners.com. Thank you to everyone for joining us on today's webinar, and thank you to Tarlock, Miles, and Mark for presenting. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Take care.